evening and welcome to The Money Show, the only show of its kind which brings you the market's top financial experts to answer all of your financial queries. I'm Avni Raja. Let's straight get to it. We've got on the show with us today PV Subramanyam, CEO Subramani.com. Thank you very much, Mr. Subramanyam, for joining in. Before we get to the queries really for the day today that we've been getting, my first question is, it's just past Diwali. It's a good time for people to actually take stock of their financial portfolio, look at their investments, see where they want to be 15 years down the line, and sort of readjust if required. How would you suggest people go about overhauling their portfolio if required, sort of to take stock of the situation and move ahead from this point on?
See, what happens is when people change 3-4 jobs, they have opened different bank accounts. They've got their PF lying in different places. They actually do not have an inventory of what they have. They don't know whether they have enough number of credit cards, whether they have pension plans. So there is first step is to create an inventory of what you have. So the minute you create an inventory of what you have, then slowly things can get into place. If you have got 5-6 savings bank accounts, it makes no sense. So you go and put everything into one savings bank account, maximum of 2. Then you remove all the excess money which is lying in savings bank accounts and put it into mutual funds, liquid funds, etc. Check your insurance, because if a marriage has happened, or if you have had a kid, or you've inherited some money, your requirements for insurance may have changed. So I will look at all that. So first step, create an inventory, put it into different boxes, see what you have, and then you can review where you want to go. But at least step 1, Diwali cleaning. Maybe you'll close down a few bank accounts, maybe you'll close down a few mutual funds. If you've got too many, I've seen people with 30-40 mutual funds. You need 4 or 5. So, it's a good time to consolidate and rationalize. So Diwali is a good time to be reviewing what you're doing. So yeah, Diwali cleaning is a good first step to do.
Okay, so not just Diwali cleaning of the house, but Diwali cleaning of your entire portfolio and reassessing that is the need of the hour. Okay, let's move on then, Mr. Subramanyam. We've gotten quite a few queries and questions. First up, we have a question, and this has been sent in to us from Chirag Bogra. He's emailed us saying that I invest 2,000 rupees a month in each of these funds. Please, can I have my portfolio reviewed? It's a long-term time horizon of the next 10 to 15 years. I think those names should just come up for you on the screens of some of the mutual funds that he has invested his money in, and then we'll get Mr. Subramanyam as well to give us his assessment of the same. Should the names just come up for you on the screens, and that should just happen in a bit?
I'll just take you through the names. It's DSP BlackRock Opportunities Fund, Franklin India Smaller Companies Fund, Kotak Select Focus Fund, Mirae Asset Emerging Blue Chip Fund, and Most Focused Multi-Cap 35 Fund, as well as a Reliance Small Cap Fund. So, Mr. Subramanyam, those are the list of funds that he has.
Let's go one by one. DSP BlackRock is a good fund. Manager takes a high risk, but for taking that high risk, he gives you a good return. Therefore, it's a little expensive fund, but it's a good fund. He should stick around. In fact, all these funds look good. Franklin India Smaller Companies Fund, again a good fund, and there is no reason for him to get out of that. He should have when he has a long-term view, he should be there. Mirae Asset Emerging Blue Chip, again a good fund. And Most Focused Multi-Cap is not doing as well as some of the other funds, but yes, if he's got a longish time frame, which he has, he's got a 15 to 20 year time frame, it's another good fund to be in. And again, he has another fund which is a Reliance Small Cap. I think that's a little too much. So he should stick to his top 5 funds. So Reliance Small Cap, maybe he can skip and increase his allocation to Mirae Blue Chip. That will be the only change I suggest. Okay. But even if he doesn't do that, it doesn't really matter. These are good funds, chosen well, and he should just stick around with those funds.
All right, that's as far as Chirag is concerned. Chirag, hope you've got the answers that you were looking for. Our next query is coming in from Medhavi Mayur Pandey, who's written into us, says, I would like to start saving for my children's education. In my portfolio, I have 3 mutual funds with an SIP of 2,000 rupees per month in each scheme. Please advise if these schemes are good for the long-term investment of 10 years. So, Mr. Subramanyam, extremely a focused question with terms of her time horizon and what she really wants it for. And as far as the 3 mutual funds are concerned, she's got Aditya Birla's Top 100 Fund, Franklin India Smaller Companies Fund, and ICICI Proof Focused Blue Chip Equity Fund. What would your advice be for her?
Actually, I'm very happy that she has not chosen a children's plan or something like that. That would be more restrictive, that you can't withdraw it before the kid turns 18 or something. These are in like any open funds in which she has put in her money. So all the three funds are good funds, and when she says she has a 10-year horizon, it means that her kids must be about 7 or 8 years of age, and she would require this money when the kid is 18. So she should be in these funds, and her horizon, see, the thing is, we are answering this question in 2017. So till 2022-23, she should be in these funds. Maybe review it once in a while, and if these funds are doing well, just continue. In another 7 years' time, she should start shifting to some debt fund, etc., because then she will have only 3 years to go for withdrawal. So close to withdrawal, she should not be in so much of equity. So for next 6-7 years, these are good funds, and by that time, which means 2024, she should start withdrawing it partially and put it into a debt fund, so that exactly 10 years later, when she has to pay fees, she'll have the money. Of course, if her horizon changes, if she requires it in 12 years instead of 10 years, then she can wait for a couple of years. But yeah, all three funds are good funds. She should just continue.
Yeah, actually, I know that, one of the children is about 2 years old, I think, and the other is unborn. So she's really planning well in advance. And that's something I want to stress on as well. Mr. Subramanyam, what do you think, when is actually the right time to start planning for a child's education?
Look, this is so difficult to believe. If she's already planning for a kid which is in her womb, I mean, this is maybe a little too much. But yeah, okay. See, the advantage in planning very early is that you have more choices. Okay. If you go through a bad patch, you have time to wait. Whereas if you start when the kid is already 15, in 5 years, you really don't have too much time. Here, she's got 18 years. So even if the fund does badly from her age of 12 to her age of, to the kid's age of 15, she still has another 3-4 years to recover. So there is a huge advantage in starting early. So yeah, this is a very, very well prepared mother, I would think.
Right. So, the other question I really had, which you mentioned briefly, as far as you're happy that she's not invested in any of the child gift fund kind of plans that some of these fund houses offer. If you can help our viewers understand as to why, because that's something that typically often, somebody might choose saying that let's invest in this. It's a good idea for the long term for our children's future. Why would you suggest not to opt for that and to opt for regular plans instead?
Okay, for this lady who's so well prepared, I'm sure she'll not touch the fund. So for her, she does not need to do things like that. But if there is somebody who might touch that money to spend on something else, then these child plans are good, because largely these child plans cannot be touched before the child is 18. That money will go only into the child's name. So I know a person who did not want his son-in-law to be able to touch the money. So he put the money in a child plan in the child's name. That money will be withdrawn only when the child is 18. No, these are sensible things to do. But if you don't want to be restricted to saying I can withdraw only when the child is 18, they might need when the child is 15. The child may want to go abroad to do, just after 10th standard may want to go abroad. So then you might need the money a little earlier. You don't want to be restricted, in the choices that you make. And here she has chosen 2-3 funds which are, large cap, mid cap, all covered. Whereas in a child plan, you're restricted to that fund manager, and then you are stuck with that fund manager whether he does well or does badly. Here you have a choice. After some time, you can just migrate out of that fund into some other fund. So it's better to keep the choices with yourself, especially for somebody who is so well prepared, and she's preparing almost 18 years in time. So for her, she does not need to have those child plans. But for somebody who does not have the discipline of saying I will not touch the money, maybe a child plan makes sense.
Okay, hope you've taken note of that advice, and I, as well as other people who are looking to start saving for children, what exactly should be the outlook when it comes to putting money in equity funds and then perhaps at a later stage converting it to debt funds. That's the advice that Mr. Subramanyam has given. Tell you what, we'll slip into a quick break. Stay with us. On the other side, we talk a little bit about retirement planning. What should be your agenda for the same? And we've got some more viewer queries as well lined up. And as we take that break, I want to tell our viewers that you too can connect with us if you have any questions or queries. We have certain grids that you can reach out to us on. We have a number, Twitter or Involve. Please do reach out and send in your questions. Thanks for staying on with us. This is The Money Show, and right now we are in conversation with Mr. P.V. Subramanyam. He is CEO, www.subramani.com. Well, we've discussed quite a few topics. We spoke about investment for a child's education, had a portfolio completely rejigged. Now let's discuss another topic, which I'm sure will be fairly intriguing to a lot of viewers, Mr. Subramanyam, the golden rules of retirement planning. And, run us through some sort of the thumb rules or the basics that you would advise.
Yeah, see, it's very difficult to convince a 24-year-old to start saving for retirement because he's still thinking, oh, my grandfather is retiring, my father is still not retiring, so what is the hurry to save money? The thing is, even when you're 24, 25 and you start saving something as small as 40, 50 rupees a day, and this 40, 50 rupees a day actually comes from, switching off the lights and not racing your car at the signal, or one cup of tea or things like that. So it's not a big lifestyle sacrifice that you're making. The advantage in starting so young is because you have another 30 years, 35 years to put together your corpus, and that really helps because when you start young, you have a longish time and you can take a longish stake on equity, which really helps you in creating money for the long term. Then starting early is much better than starting late, even with a bigger amount. And the fact that you have started early allows you to take an equity exposure till you're maybe 70. You need to understand that the rules of investing are changing today, because if you're going to live till 90 and you start investing at 25, you are more like an endowment fund of a college, because you're talking of 50, 55 years, 60 years kind of time frame. Earlier, the average age at which people died was 65. So there was no question of saving for 65, whereas you could live for 30 years post retirement or 40 years post retirement. So you're much better off today starting early. Don't need to buy any pension plan or anything of that sort, as long as you're into large cap equity funds or mid cap equity funds, and make sure that you don't touch the money. Please don't interrupt the compounding, because if you interrupt the compounding, you're disturbing it and you will not accumulate a good amount of money. Yes, by 40, if you have too much pressure to save for other things, stop putting in money for retirement, but at least you don't touch what you have created. And if you can increase it by 5% or 10% every year from your age of 25, you would have done a magnificent job, which means at 45 or 50, you can tell your boss, hey, I'm not coming to office from tomorrow. You'll create that fund. That's important. As soon as you create that fund, you will go to office with much less stress and very happily.
Right. Mrs. Subramanyam, I'm going to also ask you to elaborate a little bit on the kind of options that are available, because you mentioned you don't necessarily have to opt for a pension fund. What would you recommend in terms of when somebody is looking to plan their retirement?
Yeah, exactly like what I said. If this is let's talk of a 25-year-old, because you're talking of a young person.
Right.
A 25-year-old who wants to save 10,000. Again, I'm assuming as a round figure. Something like 70% can go into a large cap fund. Something like 20% can go into a mid cap, small cap fund, and 10% can go into an esoteric fund like an infrastructure fund. You don't want to put too much into it, and increase it by 10% every year. Later on, sometime when you feel that mid cap is doing better than large cap or things like that, you can cut down your large cap and increase your mid cap, which are all small tactical kind of things which you do from the age of 35 till the age of 40 or 45. By the time you're 55, 60, you have accumulated a damn decent sum of money, and then you go into a partially equity and partially debt and 2-3 kind of funds, which you create separate buckets. One is your expense bucket from which you withdraw, and one is the mid cap bucket, and one is the large cap bucket. And that money has to, remember, that money has to last you from your age of 60 till your age of 90 or 95 till what you live. So that 30, 40 years of that money has to last. So that's all. So if you get into a plan today, which is saying this is an insurance company which has sold you a pension plan, then they will give it back to you from your age of 60 as an annuity, which does not make sense, because you may retire at 55 or you may retire at 70. So that flexibility remains in your hand if you stick around with mutual funds. That's the advantage you have in mutual funds. However, if it's a person who doesn't have the discipline and you think that you are a person who might just remove it for a vacation or things like that, then lock yourself into an insurance company, take a pension and play by the rules and start your annuity at the age of 60. But if you're a person with enough discipline, create your own fund. You don't need to buy a pension plan.
Okay, so it's never too early to start planning for retirement. I hope you've taken note of all of those golden rules, because some of them are really very basic actually. As young as 25, you can start planning for your future. So the sooner, the better. Well, we've got some more queries lined up, and this time it's an email query sent in to us by Narendra Kumar. Now, Narendra writes in to us saying, should I invest rupees 10 lakh in an NPS Tier 2 instead of a saving bank account? And he's been very specific in his questions. He said, what would be the tax treatment for the returns of the NPS Tier 2? Can I make use of the Tier 2 account for generating higher returns with a lower cost and a lower tax liability? Please clarify on each of the assumptions in the outcome, especially on the tax treatment. You can break this one up, Mr. Subramanyam, and start off by telling him what exactly he should do with his 10 lakh rupees.
Comparing something like an NPS to a savings bank account is not on, because when you put money in a savings bank account, you can withdraw any amount you want whenever you want. That kind of flexibility is never available in any fund unless it's a liquid fund, where you can, some fund houses allow you to withdraw within few hours and few minutes, that you send an SMS and the money gets credited to you. NPS is not in that category. Second, I actually need not even answer the whole question when I torpedo the question by saying what you withdraw from NPS is taxable. The minute it is taxable, I put you in a completely different league, because if you keep your money in savings bank account, you're much better off. 10 lakhs in savings bank account never made sense. So maybe 50,000 stays in savings bank account, maybe about 1 lakh or 1.5 lakhs goes into some kind of a liquid fund, and the others can go into a mutual fund. Yes, NPS is cheaper in terms of costs, but NPS is expensive in terms of taxation. As of today, if you put this money in an equity fund, then the fact that you are withdrawing it after 1 year, you get the whole thing tax free. In NPS, it is taxable. That itself will dramatically reduce your return. So don't get into NPS to save money. Yes, NPS for 50,000 rupees, because that is an extra tax deduction you get, that makes sense. But no, 10 lakhs in NPS to save money just on that admin's charges, no, makes no sense.
All right, Narendra, hope you got that advice from Mr. Subramanyam and actually make note of it. All right, let's move on to our next query coming in from Brijesh, who says, I have an SIP in the following funds for the last 4 months. Now, the first SIP is to cover Section 80C, while the second is to create wealth for the long term. Can you please provide your inputs? Now, the two funds that he has is DSP BlackRock Tax Saver as well as Mirai Asset Emerging Blue Chip Fund. So, Mr. Subramanyam, very specific, two specific funds only, and both have different goals, obviously.
Yeah.
What would be your advice?
80C, and he's putting 14,000 rupees per month in an 80C fund doesn't make sense, because your 80C coverage is only 1.5 lakhs. 1.5 lakhs means anything about 12,500 which you're putting is a waste as far as 80C is concerned. So he can definitely scale down that money. He need not put 14,000, maybe he should be putting 12,000. Secondly, 80C covers a lot of things. It covers your PF. It covers your children's school fees. It covers the EMI that you pay for your house. So after all that, how much space is really left in 80C? I wouldn't know, because today 80C is not a big thing. As long as that limit remains at 1.5 lakhs, one good school fees and you're out, or maybe 2 children in school and you're out, one EMI of 15,000 and you're out. So I don't know why he's saying 14,000 rupees of EMI of SIP in a tax saver. Makes no sense. Maximum you can put in a tax saver is 12,500, assuming you're a businessman and you don't have PF. If you have PF and PF itself takes away 25,000-30,000 rupees out of 1.5 lakhs, you come down even from 12,000 to 10,000 rupees. So that does not make too much sense. But as a ELSS fund, is GSP a good fund? Yes, it's a good fund. There may be other funds, but this is a good fund. But he's not said whether he's gone into it direct or whether he's gone in through an agent, because in Mirai he said he's gone direct. So assuming you've gone direct, then it's not an expensive fund, it's a good fund. He can stay there, or there are other choices also, but yeah, it's fungible. One day he can be here, and after 3 years he can get into another fund, he can do that. Mirai Blue Chip is a good fund, long-term fund, but if there are only 2 funds in which he is putting, and all the money is going into Mirai, it doesn't make sense. He needs to put money into a large cap fund also, like a Franklin India Prima Plus or an HDFC Equity, and into Mirai Emerging Blue Chip. Then it makes sense for him to put into 2 funds, not just. But is Mirai Emerging Blue Chip a good fund? Yes, it's a good fund, but in his portfolio there is no balance. He's got only small cap fund. That's not fair. He needs a large cap fund, and he needs an ELSS fund, but I think the amount that he's putting is too much. He cannot be putting so much. We have to look at the overall picture. Nobody needs to put 1,75,000 rupees in a ELSS fund. Your maximum limit is 1.5 lakhs.
Okay, so it's very important as well to put your money into some more large cap funds. I hope you've taken note of the advice that's been given. These seem to be good funds, but it's also very important to know whether or not this has been directly taken or whether it's been through an agent. But Brijesh, thanks for sending in that query nonetheless. And let's move on to our last and final query for the day. Well, this has been emailed to us by Mr. S. Roopchand. He says, I would like to know if HDFC Prudence Fund has a monthly dividend option of around 1% per month. Is it advisable to invest? My goal is to, of course, like everyone else, maximize return and reduce tax. So, Mr. Subramanyam, I'm sure there are a lot of other people as well in the same boat, just wanting to know if the HDFC Pru fund would be a good option to invest in? What is your call? Have you had a look at the ratings, the returns, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, there is absolutely no doubt that HDFC Prudence is a rock star fund. It is managed by Prashant Jain. He's got a fantastic track record. I think it has got 30,000 crores of AUM. But this is a completely wrong reason to buy it. If you think a fund is going to give you 12% return year on year for a long period of time, it is not going to happen. There is no fund which can assure you that they will give you 12% return year on year. In fact, the last month return in this fund, I think, is negative. So if you have got a 1% dividend and the fund has given you minus 3%, let's say for last year, which means there's 4% drop in the fund value. Your fund is not increasing. Second, your question is conflicting in the sense you want to save tax, you want a withdrawal, and you want wealth accumulation. This won't happen. You accumulate money and then maybe for 5-10 years you accumulate money in HDFC Prudence, then you go and do a systematic withdrawal after 10 years of 1% of what you have put, not 1% of what is accumulated. That may be sustainable for another 10-15 years. Even that I am not sure, I have not done the math. But yes, trying to withdraw 1% per month from HDFC Prudence, you will eat into your capital, and maybe in about 5-7 years or 10 years, you might just wipe out the whole capital. So you're not creating wealth. You cannot create wealth and get dividend from the same fund. You have to have your focus more clear. Do you want to create wealth or do you want dividend? If you want wealth, don't take the dividend. If you take dividend, you will not create wealth. I think that clarity should be there.
Okay, but the all in all assessment is that it's a rock star fund. Of course, the reason for Mr. Roopchand investing in this perhaps is not entirely right now. But thank you so much nonetheless, Mr. Subramanyam. Been a pleasure chatting with you and of course helping out our viewers with their queries. So
thank you.
From Avni, me and everyone that put the show together, thanks so much for watching. Do reach out to us. The Money Show at etnow.tv is where you can email us any questions you may have on personal finance. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.